The project adjustment module is intended to build your understanding as to how you can adjust project transactions along with understanding the setup around it. With project adjustments, basically you have a few options. You can adjust a specific transaction. You can actually go in and run a select statement to select multiple transactions, so you can adjust multiple records at one time. And then after the fact, you can go ahead and review the adjustments as they're flagged as adjustments. So we'll go ahead and demonstrate that functionality. And the scenario that we'll be looking into is a resource on a project coded as time to the incorrect category, and accounting found out after his timesheet has been approved and posted. So we'll have to run a project adjustment to correct this mistake. Let's go ahead and take a look at a project adjustment. All right, so we're going to go in and we're going to adjust some transactions. So there's multiple ways to adjust transactions in Dynamics AX. You can do a manual adjustment, or there's the adjustment functionality that will be showing off here. And when I'm talking about adjustments right now, it's the adjustment functionality, the automated functionality. And basically there's just different areas that you can do that adjustment routine from. I'll just display a couple. You can always do it from the periodic routine. Under transactions, there's adjust transactions. And this is basically how you can adjust quite a few transactions or find any transaction in the system based on a bunch of criteria that you define. If we go to a specific project as well, you can see on the Manage tab up top, there's the Adjust Transactions. When you hit this, you're selecting transactions specifically on a specific project to adjust. But the route that I always like to go is in the project details. Actually, you don't even need to go to the project details. The way I like to do it is I like to go to the Posted Transactions list page. So I have my adjustment project selected. I'll go to Posted Transactions. And basically here I see, oh, here's all the transactions I posted. And I know that there's one that I do not want to have the category of project management or PM. So you notice there's the Adjust Transaction button up on the action pane. And it's got, when you hit it, it goes, well, what date do you want the adjustment to be as of? So we'll just do a day in the future here, 3/23, so you can see the difference. So basically select your transaction, hit the Adjust Transaction button, populate a date that you want the adjustment to be as of. It has to be an open date, and then we'll hit OK. And when I say open, open in the ledger. And then once you hit OK, it's going to bring you into the adjustment form. And basically the first part of this adjustment form is asking you, well, what do you want to adjust on this transaction? You can technically populate nothing on this form and just hit OK. And I'll do that. I'll display how you use this form downstream, but I'll hit OK here. And basically now it's showing this is the actual adjustment form. The top pane is basically the original transaction. So it goes, here's the transaction that you're trying to adjust, which is up here. It's our transaction type. It's for project management, resource 20, which is Julia Funderburg, quantity of 10, for cost price of 200, sales price of 350, and it's billable. Well, technically we don't want this thing to be a project management category. So on the bottom pane is where you define what you want to change. So, and that previous form that displayed where we could have changed stuff, all it does is it takes those changes that you would have entered in that form and substitutes them in on the lower pane. So basically what we'll be doing here is we'll just say that it's design work that they did, not PM work. So we'll select the design work. And there's parameters too around adjustments, because if you specify a different category and there's different rates, you can have the rates automatically updated as well. But anyways, you can adjust what you want on this form. There's different tabs to review too. There's the general tab, which is basically a representation of the overview, just in a little different view. Then you have the cost tab, which basically shows the cost price, the sales price, which shows the sales price, and then your financial dimensions. A lot of time financial dimensions get adjusted too, and this is the easy way of doing that as well. But anyways, I'm changing to the design category, and basically all you do is adjust what you need to adjust in the bottom, and then you select the post button. And now it goes, all right, your transaction was updated. So now if we back up a step, and we look at the transactions, we still have our 4, but if I refresh this view, now we see that we have, here's the original on the 22nd. Here's a reversing transaction for it. It reverses it out, flags them both as non-chargeable. That's very important when we get to time and material. And then basically it booked a new transaction as a design category and made it billable. And in this case, this project is a time and material project. So yeah, so now when we go to bill the customer, we'd only pull in these 4 transactions, the ones that are labeled chargeable to be billed to the customer. So that's just a quick way of adjusting a specific transaction. So now let's just say that we need to adjust all these transactions right here from the 18th through the 20th, and we need to make them non-chargeable. They're just work that wasn't done properly, and the customer's arguing it, and they don't want to be billed for it. So we're gonna meet their requests and deem it as non-chargeable. The best way of doing this is probably through a periodic routine. So you can go to project management and accounting and go to periodic transactions and then adjust transactions. And then from here, it brings you to that form that we were originally looking at where we made the adjustment. And you can see that it's blank. What you do from here is you actually hit the select button, and then it brings up, here's the select criteria that you want to define. What type of transactions do you want to include? So you can include hours, expenses, any of the transaction types, and fees as well if you're working with the service management module. And then we have all the different project types. So in our case, I mean, it's really not going to matter because I'm going to define the specific project that I'm looking at. But in general, if you want to adjust a ton of different transactions over multiple projects, you can include which ones you want. You might want to just get rid of all your internal type projects and just look at external facing projects to evaluate against. And then the transaction statuses as well. If it's posted, yes, we'll adjust it. If it's on an invoice proposal, you can say, no, we don't want to adjust it. If it's estimated, we don't want to adjust it, so ignore those ones. And then you can define the line properties as well. To and from date's important too, so we can say from 3/18 to 3/20 is what we're looking at, and then the adjustment date is the same as 4, and we'll just put it on 3/24, so it's just a different date. And then we'll talk about on hold, the on-hold only funding source field here later on when we start talking more about contracts. But I'm going to leave the project filter wide open. It just has an asterisk, meaning any project, because I think I don't have very many transactions in the system of the date that I defined, but I'll hit OK. And then basically, yeah, so it worked out right. There's the 3 transactions from my project 135. They're in that upper pane, so this is them in their original format, and really what we want to do is change them all to non-billable. So you can select all the transactions that you want to adjust at one time, and this is going to be an example of how we use this adjust button. So I'm picking all 3 transactions. I'm going to hit the adjust button, which brings up that form that we were seeing earlier, and basically all I'm going to do is say, I want to adjust the line property to non-billable for all of them. And up here is really, if you wanted to change the project, the activity number, the category on all 3 of those transactions, you can adjust that field. And then you can see there's quite a few other toggles as well if you want to adjust the default values from setup. So I'll just go ahead and hit OK. And notice now, in the lower half, it's only showing us 1 transaction. This is where this form gets a little tricky, and I've got a lot of questions over the year when I was working support on how this thing handles. So basically, whatever transaction you have selected in the upper pane is what transaction's showing in the lower pane. So if I have the second one selected, you notice how the quantity is changing on these. So if I select this one, now it's at a quantity of 10, and they're all non-billable at the bottom. So if you want to post all these adjustments, you can, but you have to select all 3 lines at the top and hit post. If you do not, it's basically just going to take whatever one you have active down below and post that. So I'll select all 3, and I'll hit post. And notice how they remove themselves from that top pane too once you post them. So now if we go back and look at that project, which is project 135, I'll just go to all projects, jump over to 135 and look at the posted transactions. We're going to see quite a few adjusting transactions. Actually, we don't. So that's great. So this is a good example too, because there's rules, and we'll be talking about those rules when we get into the next module, which is called adjustment setup, on when you should create a new transaction and when you shouldn't. So you can see in this case, it didn't create a new transaction for the ones that it deemed as non-chargeable. It basically just flipped the invoice status to non-chargeable, and if we select on one of these and we go look at the actual details of this transaction, we can see the line property changed to non-billable. And if you look at the general tab too, it doesn't show that it has an adjustment reference ID because there's no transaction associated with this one. It just basically adjusts it. But if we go back and look at that adjusting entry from our initial example, so this one where it backed out the 10 hours and then booked a new 10 hours, if we look at the details here, we'll notice that we have an adjustment reference which ties it back to that original transaction. So if I select that icon, it should bring us over to that transaction too. And the only problem that with the way that I just did it there is it brings you to the generic view of this this form that is not project specific, and I was in the project specific view of it, or sorted or filtered by project. All right, so hopefully that gives you a procedural overview of how you can adjust some transactions. Next we'll be talking about some of the setup around adjusting.